Welcome back. My next guest is the great Nestor J. Aparicio, always bringing the heat, always passionate about not just Baltimore sports, but local sports and world events. Nestor, welcome in.
Hey man, championship game weekend, Dennis. I've been going through the archives
Hmm.
of 28 Super Bowls and thinking about like championship game weekends and how many times I've bought a ticket, got in my car, put beer in the trunk, froze because it's never warm at well, it was in St. Louis in the Dome back in
There you
'98.
go. There you
You know,
go.
I had a couple of warm ones, but I did the NFC Championship game in 1997,
Okay.
which was the Carolina Panthers going to Green Bay. It
Ah,
was 3 degrees that
ooh.
day. Brett Favre. I have such vivid memories of wearing the cheese head that day, and I bought this. You ever seen my Michelin Man outfit? Everybody makes fun of me.
No, never
On the
seen that.
cold days, on the cold days at Ravens games, I have this black sweat winter suit. It zips up the front. It's a Ralphie outfit
Hey,
from
you know what's up? So it kept you warm. That's the main thing.
I bought that in Green Bay the day before the game. I figured
See
I don't
what? See, when in Green Bay, you must do as people in Green Bay do. So you bought the warmest thing you could find. That's brilliant.
I thought about it. Like I had the warmest stuff I had with me, and of course the car we had that day, Scotty P and I, the heat didn't work. We had this little Volvo that was awful.
No,
Yeah, we got up to
3 degree
Sheboygan and we're
weather.
like,
In
it's a
three
little
degree
cold in
weather.
Sheboygan, I mean,
Yeah.
hey, that steam coming out of not the way you do it over Coons Baltimore,
Ah. Yeah.
So this was more like out of used cars.
Got it. Got it.
So I mean, I was in Pittsburgh, and I love to brag about this. Every year they choked. When Elway went in there and beat him in '97, Kevin Eck and I went up. I had tickets at Three River Stadium. We were there at that game. When Brian Billick lost the game at the Metrodome in '99, that became the
Sure.
the last game he played, and Randall Cunningham and the Atlanta Falcons and the Dirty Bird. I was at that game. That was a warm one too. It was in mini. It was in the Met
In the
in the
dome.
Metrodome. Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
but it's cold getting there though, right? You're warm once you're inside, but you do have to travel there.
You
You
remember what I
got
remember about that trip? And because you remember the games because you remember the games, right? Like I was at the drive game with
listen. I
Elway
I
in
remember
'86.
like you. I'm a huge football. I go back to Bud Grant and the Vikings when they play the Rams in Minnesota, and the Rams were always favored. And you got the Southern California team, and it was always frozen, snowing, and the Vikings would always take it to them.
Absolutely, and you would think the Bills would have done that last weekend, right?
You would have think, especially with the Bengals having three starting offensive linemen out. Got to give a lot of credit to those cats going up there, punch the Bills right in the mouth. Didn't see that coming, to be frank with you.
Well, these are where the memories are made, right? Like this week, I have a great piece out of Baltimore Positive. I hope you go, and I know you're going to want to listen to this. I should have just made this a segment brought to you by Coons Baltimore Ford because I had on a man who's been my friend for 30 years, 31 years. He was the PR director for the Houston Oilers in
Ah,
1991. So when I went on the radio in 1992, we didn't have a football team. Kenny Albert and I were doing the show together at AM 1230. This is I had just gone to the Buffalo Super Bowl, the Buffalo Bills Redskins Super Bowl in Minneapolis. It was 92. I'm on the air in January of 92 doing my thing. And I called the Houston Oilers and I asked for the PR director. And I said, listen, I do a sports radio show in Baltimore and I love the Houston Oilers. Will you help me once in a while get someone on, or
nice.
maybe once a year put the coach on with me to be a clown for 20 minutes and have a good time with him? And he said, you will send me your information so I know who you are. There's no internet. It's 1992. And his name's Chip Namias. And Chip was the PR director for the Fort Lauderdale Strikers. Met Pele back in the day in the
Wow,
NASL. He was the PR director for the Dolphins for both of their the assistant for the Woodstock and the Dan Marino Super Bowls.
got
He
it.
and Coach Schuler were very, very close. He was close with two kings, Coach Schuler, and he's from Memphis, and he's great friends with Jerry the King Lawler.
Oh, very
So,
good, very
so
good.
Chip is just this interesting man, but he was the Oilers PR director, and we talked about losing that game in Buffalo. He was the PR director for that game, and he's my friend all these years later. So if 2 weeks from now, Super Bowl week, I'm going to be doing some best of stuff. When Adam Sandler, Jennifer Lawrence, um, David Spade, Chris Rock, all of them have been on the show at the Super Bowl. Chip's the PR director. Chip does
Nice.
Hollywood actors now and all of that. So Chip has always helped me at Super Bowls. So I wanted to have him on talking Oiler history. And unfortunately, Oiler championship game history was only 2 times back in Pittsburgh.
It wasn't good. Couldn't beat the Steelers, right? Couldn't knock the door down like Bum Phillips. Couldn't kick it in.
But memories are made, right? In these big games, you know what I mean?
And the sad thing, back in the day, talk about the Oilers, they were probably the second best team in the NFL. They just couldn't beat the best team at that time, which was the Pittsburgh Steelers.
They knocked on that door. They never kicked it in.
Knocked that son of a gun down. Bum Phillips,
son of a gun. That's why you're going to love the Chip Namias piece. So I brought I don't have it in here right now because I took it out. I have an Oiler trash can from my childhood. And I told Chip this, and this is an interesting thing as to where I am with the Ravens, and I think, the audience knows what has been done unto me and what will be done unto me in regard to the Ravens. And I have all of my Oilers stuff. I never had the heart to get rid of it. I just put it in the attic. I put it out at the radio station, let the mice run through it, whatever. But I have every pom-pom hat, tree ornament for Christmas, sweatshirt. All of it's dated in the 80s. I got shot glasses. I got coffee mugs, like all of it, right? And I never threw it away. And the interesting part of loving the Ravens all these years and being a Raven soul is, man, if I had been a Browns fan or a Bills fan, I'd have to really have given something up. The fact that they moved to Tennessee was like this sweet serendipity. It's like being a Quebec Nordiques fan or a Hartford Whaler, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's just in the attic, and it's this wonderful. It's like being a Doors fan. They're not there anymore, but you can go back and listen to Roadhouse Blues whenever you want and get that the feeling again. And I love that about the Oilers, that they're defunct. Like the Skipjacks or the Clippers.
They're gone. Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. In fact, I know the Ravens are playing in Nashville this year, and I've never been to Nashville, so just waiting for the date to come out so I can book my plane tickets.
You and me?
Absolutely.
You and me?
Absolutely.
Barbecue?
Let's go. Gotta go. I've never been, so I want to go there. I want to watch the game. I want to buy an authentic hat and some boots from Nashville. I want to do it all.
I do know for a fact. So Chip will tell you in the segment that we did this week, and I reached the Chip. We're Facebook friends. He loves music. He's a great guy. Gave me a great restaurant recommendation in L.A. When I was out there last year. But just a good human and a guy that's been in my life for 30 years, and a guy that when I'm in L.A. I'll look him up. We have a date to go to the Hollywood Bowl to do something. Might be Willie Nelson before it's all over with. But the interesting thing, through all of this with the Oilers and their history and moving to Nashville is that all of the Oiler players were wayward, kind of like Bruce Laird and Stan White were here, right? And Johnny, right? All of them when the team left. And the Texans it never happened for the Texans and Dante Pastorini and all them because they didn't feel like they were Texans. And so Amy Adams invited all the Oilers back for the first time ever back in October. And Chip told me that they treated him like a player. His name was in lights in the stadium.
Nice.
And everybody got Derek's and everybody got stuff. He said, but in the gift shop there, you can buy an Oiler. You can buy that the Oilers still belong.
Okay.
As a brand to her. That they own the markings and that she could slap an Oilers logo on the team for a throwback game. Although they lost like 51-0 that time they tried that in the snow.
Wouldn't do it again. That would be ill-advised. But that's the one thing that I think we all, guys like you and I in our age group, in our generation, we feel still bad about the Colts leaving here with the colors. Or at least when we took the Browns from Cleveland, they kept the colors. Thank God, those god-awful colors. They kept the records. But when the Colts left Baltimore to Indianapolis, and I don't even know why some city would want the other team's colors and records and everything else. To me, Johnny U, all the records here, Burt Jones, it's the Colts. But I want to say something to you.
By the way, I just want to hold this up.
There you go.
Because I collect belt. This is my childhood belt buckle. I didn't buy this. I bought this at Sears in 1976. I promise you. This came on a belt, a young man's belt, probably from my Aunt Clara for Christmas. 1976, I bet.
Nostalgia here at its best,
Is
right?
that to say Burt Jones? Can you just hear Roger Carr?
Oh, my God. Come on, Lydell Mitchell and all those great guys. John Dutton. We're going back now in the day. Still the best uniform in the NFL, by the way, isn't it? It's still the best uniform, isn't it? Every time I see that uniform, I get a heartache. I get pains. Come on now. Yeah. For Maryland and Baltimore. We'll fight on for victory in Baltimore.
Who's going to win
100%.
this week, man?
But
So as
before
long as
that,
the Eagles don't win, man, we can't have the Eagles
well,
back in the Super Bowl, can we?
but we can. But before that, Nestor, when the watching the Bills get clobbered by the Bengals, I flash back to 2006, right at M&T Bank Stadium with the Colts,
Oh,
the 5 field goals to 2 field goals game. There is very few things in life and in sports are as bad as a home loss, right? Just oh my gosh, it's terrible, isn't it?
my wife has video of me, and it's on a CD hard drive, RAM drive here somewhere. Literally, I was blubbering in over the city. I was over the purple lights all over the city. I was blubbering in the window about I can't believe they lost. I
Can't believe they
can't
lost.
believe they lost. So
Because
I would agree that wasn't the toughest one though. The Cundiff thing was brutal.
Conda
I
was
mean,
brutal, but that was on the road, right? That was up in New England. You were probably there. I'm sitting at home watching it. But the thing that hurt the most about losing to the Colts in '06, besides the fact it was the Colts and Peyton Manning and the Ursays, was that had the Ravens gotten past the Colts, they had a really good shot of winning the Super Bowl. I believe the Bears were the best team
sure.
in NFC that year, so that was a missed opportunity.
And we would have had Prince singing Purple Rain
Oh
at
my
our
God, it
Super
would have been
Bowl,
perfect. But
right?
then you talk about horrible losses. The Condiff miss was horrible. The 2019 loss of the Titans was horrible. But I really felt bad for the Bills fans. I mean, that was a shellacking that they took in freezing weather with snow coming down, and it was just a bad showing. But that team.
The 6 teams interesting too in the annals of Ravens history, right? In that a lot of those guys never won. Like Todd Heap, there was that middle period of good players that
You're
were
right.
here. Kelly Gregg did win because he was in the front end, and the Dallas Thomas they were on the. But between the 12 years that they
Right.
didn't win a Super Bowl, there were some real quality Ravens, Ring of Honor Raven guys who weren't a part of either one, but touched every. Well, Ray Lewis was part of both, right? So
Sure.
sort of the bridge, but touching all of those players, Jarrett Johnson, some guys that were on the 6 team. And Haloti, those kind of guys that were of the era that won or didn't win.
Great point.
Yeah, and listen, you and I go back to the Orioles with 79 and 83, right? I mean, they were almost the same team.
They were.
I mean, like as far as players and disappointment over 5 years, every Tippy Martinez, Dennis, you go through all of these names of Eddie Murray. Cal wasn't there in '79, but he would be the straw that stirred the drink. But the Flacco teams from 8 to when we won, man, I mean that's a special group of players.
They had some good players, some good teams. Well, we've had winning football around here for a long, long time. Although you would think that the Ravens just went 7-10 instead of 10-7, right? Still a big topic of conversation. The Lamar contract, probably the biggest story in the NFL still that's non-playoff football related. Look, a lot of time between now and the NFL draft and free agency and what happens between now and then for the Ravens.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to savor what we got left, right? Like this Lamar thing will play out. I'm doing some traveling, seeing some Springsteen, hopefully going to the Super Bowl. I mean, I have things going on that the Lamar thing to me, all of it's going to be done behind closed doors. There's going to come a point where the curtain's going to open, and the curtain's probably going to open right around the time the tagging period begins, right? March,
Sure.
And there's going to be combine time. There's going to be conjecture. Lamar's going to tweet something.
I think it's hysterical when the player tweets and people try to decipher the cryptic tweets of these athletes.
Vague booking.
Figure out what's that?
Vague booking, right?
Yeah, vague booking.
Vague booking. Yeah, so everybody's interpreting all this. Listen, I think you and I pegged it the right way last week. I will continue to say I think that someone else will offer more money. Someone else will make it attractive enough for the Ravens to not do the deal with him, and they'll get picks and they'll move on, and that's probably where this is fated to be, because I don't think it's fated that the Ravens will pay him the most, and I don't think it's fated that Lamar loves it here so much that he'll just take their best deal. So somewhere in there, and hurt feelings and ego and pride and the fact that he doesn't have an agent, it all sort of points me to say the Ravens need to move on. The Ravens, he's great. He's awesome. We have won playoff games right now. Like, let him go be great somewhere else. We'll shine him up. We'll get as many. What are they really going to get for him? I mean, this is one thing we really haven't talked about is what will the real compensation be?
I've seen some chatter out there about the Carolina Panthers. They have a young cornerback they can give up, J.C. Horn, in addition to 2 firsts, maybe 3, a bunch of seconds. The Atlanta Falcons also have a young corner that they can throw in there, starting corner opposite of Marlon Humphrey. Again, is a 2 first, is a 3 first combined with maybe 2 seconds. I think that's his value. But I do think the biggest thing for Lamar Jackson is, does he want to be in Baltimore? Does he want to give the Ravens a hometown discount in the form of a non-guaranteed contract, which is what he's looking for? To me, that's what it comes down to. And the problem for the Ravens is, what are they going to do at quarterback? I mean, do they bring in Taylor Heineke for a year, draft a rookie with a top 10 pick, and watch him develop? Because
if they had Derek Carr here next year, I'm convinced they could win 10 games. I mean, they
could win 10 games with Baker Mayfield, but do you tie up money in a quarterback like that?
Well, what's tie up money?
For Derek Carr, probably $90 million over 3 years. Baker Mayfield, a lot less than that. Taylor Heineke, even less than that. Especially if you have a rookie quarterback.
I don't think you have to guarantee Derek Carr money, right? Like, I think you could get him and say, if you stink, you have to go, like everyone else. Like, like in the same way that if Lamar ripped his knee up next year.
But I think Carr's value is going to be much greater than what the Ravens are going to be willing to pay, especially if they can open up another 4 or 5 year window with a rookie quarterback, a C.J. Stroud, a Bryce Young, a Will Levis. There's 3 quarterbacks in the top 10 right there I just named. But the question is, will he become Lamar Jackson, Joe Flacco, or Kyle Bowler, or
do you think Eric DeCosta and Joe Ortiz, right around September 1, said we better really be looking at quarterbacks this year because we might be going back. We might be going back in. At real quarterbacks for the first time in a while,
100%.
And saying, what will this guy be in 26? Versus what we be paying Lamar and what Lamar might be and what Lamar's been the last 2 years, which is a guy who hasn't played playoff games. That's who he is. That's what he is now. And he's not that to our fan base. He's still a hero, and let's build him a statue and let's give him all he wants. And I don't understand that sentiment. And I think one of the toughest questions that did not get asked in the aftermath of all of this and should be asked, and I know you'd be asking this, is if they had come to terms, whatever the terms were, maybe even signed him when they were 9-3 or 8-4, whatever that was back 2 months ago, and said, all right, Lamar, we'll get you to $200 million flat, guaranteed. Do you want to be here or do you not? We'd love to do it right now. You're playing great ball. This is real. It's $200 million, real money. And if he, I would think that there's a point for all of this where the Ravens just have said, you and I were talking about this in August, man, right?
I think both sides get to a point of enough, right? They had enough, he had enough. But like any good organization, you can believe the Ravens have a plan B and a plan C. You have to have contingency plans. You have to have a succession plan. You can bet they've been scouting quarterbacks for the last couple of years, not just this year.
If he had a deal, would he have played 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
I mean, Patrick Mahomes is going to limp all the way out to Arrowhead Sunday, do everything he can do.
Well, there's a difference between your ankle and your knee. I mean, when the knee bends back the opposite direction, it's like being sitting on a wobbly stool, right? It's gonna go at some point. I think he made a business decision, and I probably would have done the same thing if I were him. Ankle sprain, you just wrap it up and you tape it up and get out there, numb it and get out there. Well, the knee, it's a whole different ballgame, Ness. So I don't contract.
Listen, and I'm not accusing Lamar of anything.
We saw Tony Pollard, break his ankle late in the game between the Cowboys and the Niners. So what's his market value next season? You think the Cowboys are going to feel bad about him, or they're going to say, listen, I know you were supposed to replace Zeke Elliott, but let's see how you come back from your broken ankle. Same thing that Lamar Jackson faced if he had played for the Ravens at less than 100%.
Listen, that's true for when RG3 gives him advice.
Sure.
Or for any player who's a Willis McGahee or an Anthony Poindexter or David Ajabo or, any of these guys that have had that happen, an injury happen at a key negotiating point.
Poindexter got hurt in his senior year at Virginia. I mean, he tore all 3 ligaments. He went from being a first-round draft pick to a 7th-round draft pick. Phil Savage said he was such a good person that he would have done it all over again. he was a quality guy, but he was never the same. He tore it up, I think, in the bowl game in college. His last game in college as a senior in a bowl game.
Well, look at Jimmy Smith. Might have been in the Hall of pretty good had he not really been hurt. I mean, Jimmy Smith was a hell of a football player. I mean, he was
Player,
so prototypical.
great player.
Stayed with the organization all these years. I mean, matured in a lot of cool ways and whatever. But he had it taken away from where a guy like McAllister never. When you think about these guys, and then that would say where Marcus Peters is right now, because Marcus Peters has Hall of Fame talent, right? I think I think Marlon Humphrey is looking at himself as a Hall of Fame talent right now, as to whether they become Charles Woodson or whether they become, I don't want to say Chris McAllister, but they become a guy who got paid who's not going to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I don't disagree with it. Chris McAllister, fascinating how that's going to play out. I'd like to see him come back. He'll have to restructure his contract. He'll have to take less money.
You mean Marcus Peters? You said Chris McAllister.
I'm sorry, Marcus Peters. I digress. Thank you for correcting me. But yeah, Marcus Peters, I can see him coming back. People, he's old. He can still play. He can still ball out. And if he was willing to take less money, I think he loves the organization. I think it's a fit. He hasn't been a fit other places. I think the Ravens do a good job of letting players be themselves. And they need corners. We've seen they can't have enough corners, healthy corners. That's 17-game season is a long, long season.
Boy, I could sit here all day and we could jump from lily pad to lily pad, but you just said something really interesting. Wants to be here. Team wants him, right? Yeah. I would fully agree. Yeah. I saw Ozzie gush over him in the press box in Cleveland 2 weeks after they dealt for him 3 years ago, right? So, I noticed, this is what being a journalist, you notice these things. You get facts, not conjecture, So when it comes to Marcus Peters, I have no doubt he loves it here. And I have no doubt they love him. Now, whether they get a deal done, it's hard enough to get a deal done, right? It's hard being married when you love her and she loves you, right? It's still hard, right? So
got to work at it.
For them, I would say that feels like something that might get done. Doesn't feel like Lamar loves them and they love Lamar, right?
You heard DeCosta say it takes two to tango, right? That was a message there. It wasn't really cryptic. It was, yeah, we have the appetite, but he also has the appetite. And if he doesn't have the appetite, guess what? We have a mechanism. We have things in place that will allow us as a business to move forward, move organization forward. And guess what? He's going to be fine, but so are we. That's the whole thing. Does he want to be in Baltimore?
Yeah.
For whatever reason. If he wants to be here, guess what? He'll make it happen. If he doesn't want to be here, it's okay. Everybody's going to be fine.
But we go back to an era, and I'll Gary Baxter called me randomly the other day, and we're Zooming on Monday about business.
Good guy. I like Gary.
Gary's the best, man. He always makes me laugh because he's always got joy. He's always this
good guy.
He's always joyful. So yeah, totally. I agree 100%. But all of these, Gary Baxter is the greatest example ever. He sat in McDonald's with Ozzie crying because he didn't want to leave, right? Jarrett Johnson never wanted to leave, right? Even though he got to go to San Diego and got paid and all that. Dwayne Starks didn't want to leave. None of those guys. Trevor Price got here, has never left, right?
Look at Anquan Bolden, right? Played, I believe, the majority of his career with the Cardinals, retired a Raven. It tells you a lot about the guys that want to be here, the guys that bleed purple versus bleeding red that Bolden could have. And had Bolden retired as a Cardinal, nobody would have batted an eye. I mean, he's earned that. He's a Hall of Fame wide receiver. And probably Ozzie's biggest mistake was not signing him. What's changed?
Well, I mean, example, just straight out example, right? This weekend we're going to watch the AFC Championship game. There's Hayden Hurst. He was our first round draft pick. He asked to be traded, right? Then there's Orlando Brown on the other side, who. It happened.
He thought he was a left tackle. He wanted left tackle money.
Good business for the Ravens. But I'm just saying there has been Hollywood Brown wanted out, right? There's been this island of, I don't want to say misfit toys, but these are guys Eric looks in the eye and says, you want to be a Raven? They bring him in, they give him a job, and then all of a sudden they don't want to be here anymore somehow.
I think it's generational, Nestor. I think NFL players are looking at NBA players who are, it's about them, me, my brand, whether you're LeBron James, taking your talents from Cleveland to this place to that place, and trying to attract and trying to buy a championship by attracting other great players around you. So I think you're seeing a transition just like the NBA to the NFL, where the players are all about themselves versus team first. And I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying this generation, they talk through Twitter, they talk through social media, and you have to try to understand them on their terms. The things are changing very, very fast.
Do you understand Eli Apple or do you not?
Eli Apple. Look, I'm like you. I'm old school. I'd rather let my numbers, my performance speak for me, rather than pound my chest. Michael Jordan said, "When you're good, people tell you. When you're great, when you're good, you tell people. When you're great, people tell you." And
I
and I
love
live
you.
and I
You
live
got to
by
write
that.
all those down
I
for
live
me
by
so
that.
I can
I live by
can.
that. You don't have to beat your chest. If you're Michael Jordan, if you're LeBron James, if you're uh, Patrick Mahomes, if you're Tom Brady, you don't have to tell people how great you are. You don't have to be on social media spewing whatever, trying to get clicks and attract attention, and being an overall idiot and a jerk. Particularly with the Damar Hamlin situation. Just there's things you need to stay away from as a human being, and that's one of them.
We got 3 more hours this week to dislike the Bengals. And
That's
you
true. I
got
do less like
three
them.
more hours this week for if my mom were alive. Every time they say Purdy, I think of my mom because my
Ah,
mom
there
said,
you
"Oh,
go.
that's Purdy."
Alrighty. Well,
And that's Purdy.
let's hope Brock has a pretty game against the Eagles. I know you don't like him. And we go from there.
Fly, Eagles, fly. Have a good weekend, Dennis. I will see you in the winner's circle on Monday. We'll have a Super Bowl 57
Yeah,
matchup, huh? And
it'll be great.
it'll be a great matchup either way. It's going to be
It'll be
good.
great. It's going to be a
As
lot
long
of
as the
fun.
Eagles lose.
That's right. Nestor, I appreciate your thoughts, comments, and your time as always. You stay well, my friend.
I do love their pretzels, though.
There you go. Great pretzel. That's that fresh water up there. That's another story for another day. We'll take a quick break here. 1570 AM, Baltimore Positive. Be back right after this.